Today we're going to make what I'm calling a Simpleton sauce. The basic premise is we're going to roast two different kinds of tomatoes, some cherry tomatoes and some Campari tomatoes. We're going to roast some garlic, some pepper, and some onion. And then we're going to mix it all up, add some spices and herbs, and that will be our sauce. We're going to start off by roasting the tomatoes. They're going to take the longest. I'm going to end up putting them in this thing so that they don't leave stuff all over the bottom of my air fryer, and it's going to aid in cleanup. So I'm going to start, and you're going to have to adjust times based on your own device, but I'm going to start with these in for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to add the peppers and onions. After 10 minutes, the tomatoes look like that. They're starting to get a good roast on them. And that was 187 grams or 6.5 ounces of Campari tomatoes and 160 grams or 5.5 ounces of cherry tomatoes. Now to that, we're going to throw in about 165 grams of onions, 100 grams or 3 ounces of pepper. Sorry, that was 5.5 ounces of onions, and some garlic cloves, 12 grams of garlic, or, well, less than an ounce of garlic. Anyway, going to take that, going to stir it up a bit, and that's going to go in for another 5 minutes, and that's going to give us all our roasty vegetables. I'm leaving the tomatoes in because I do want them to get a bit softer. Now, when you take them out, there's a personal preference thing. Some people like the skins off, some people like the skins on. I'll talk about it when these come out. So these go back in for about another 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, it looks like this. They need about another 3 minutes. So this is what it looks like after everything's roasted up. We have all our roasted components. Now, if you want to take the skins off the tomatoes, you can either crush them with a fork and pull the tomatoes out, or crush them with anything you want, I guess. Large rock, whatever suits your fancy. You can run them through a strainer. I personally like the skins on. I think they add a tanginess. So I'm going to use an immersion blender. So to my roasted garlic, or to my roasted tomatoes, I'm going to add the roasted garlic. Everything else here I'm going to dice up, and it's going to end up as chunks in the sauce. And that is the base of our sauce. Now, if you taste it, you should get a really tomatoey, roasted flavor. And if you don't know what I mean by roasted flavor, I guess I can only recommend making this dish, and you'll find out. So next, we take the roasted onions. I'm going to be using the word roasted a lot. Starting to seem superfluous. And relatively finely chop them, but I still want them as chunks so that they end up as a texture feature when you use the sauce. Now, this sauce can be used for lots of things. Can be used as a base as a pizza sauce, a myriad of things. And the reason I didn't dice them before I roasted them was it's just harder. I would have had to done it in batches. They just would have been harder to separate out the onions and the tomatoes and whatever. So I would have had to roast everything in small batches, and this was just a matter of expediency. And there we have our roasted onion. Chopped and ready for the sauce. I know this probably doesn't need stating, but next is the pepper. So now that our sauce is assembled, I guess it's almost like a porridge, but I have an upcoming video where I use this, and you'll see why that's actually all the perfect consistency. Let's give it a taste. Okay, that's nice. Now we're going to add fresh herbs. Now that we have the basics of the sauce, the rest of this you're really going to have to adjust to your own taste. Next, I want to add fresh herbs. We're going to be using 2.5 grams of fresh sage, 5 grams of fresh oregano, and 2.5 grams of fresh parsley. These herbs are given to me by a lovely lady named Pat. Thank you very much, Pat, for the herbs. And they're going to go into the sauce. We'll start with the oregano. Now this is actually quite a bit of oregano. So this is going to have a strong oregano flavor. Now you can use dried oregano if you want. I prefer the flavor of fresh oregano. You can just mix that in. The other thing I should mention, I guess, is this sauce will actually get better as you leave it in the fridge. And if you find it too thick, you can dilute it with tomato sauce. Something I'll probably mention later on. Next, we're going to go for the sage. And as I mentioned, it's about 2.5 grams of fresh sage. Now, sage is very strong, and if you don't like the taste of sage, it's something you should probably know before you add it to this. This should give it that slightly morning on the prairie flavor that I know you're all looking for, because who doesn't want to spend a morning on the prairies? And then last but not least is the parsley. And I'm going to include the stalk, but chop it quite fine because I find it actually adds quite a bit of flavor. Oh, and the smell of that fresh parsley is just fantastic. Okay, that essentially ends the fresh herb portion of our sauce. And actually now it is thickening up more than I was expecting, so I probably will dilute it with some tomato juice. So you can taste the sage, you can taste the parsley, the oregano comes through on the back end. It's coming up very nice. And last but not least, we're going to add some spices. This part very much is to taste. Your tolerance for various things may differ. Here are the spices we're going to add. Now you can use different ones, and a lot of this, as I said, depends on your tolerance. Consider this a starting point. This is what I like to use. So I'm going to use 6.5 grams of smoked paprika, or 1.5 tablespoons. I'm going to use 8 grams or 1 tablespoon of black pepper, sorry, 2 tablespoons of black pepper. I'm going to use 7 grams of garlic powder or 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. And I'm going to use 4 grams of seasoning salt, which is about a teaspoon of seasoning salt. I don't want this too salty. Throw in our spices. And mix that around. Now, as I said, before using this, it's probably best to let it sit for, I don't know, 20 minutes to an hour. Let all these flavors meld together. So even now, just stirring it around, the smell of the fresh herbs is really coming through. So a little bit of heat added from the smoked paprika. If you don't like smoked paprika, you could also use chili flakes. Again, the fresh herbs are really coming through, and the seasoning salt added about the right amount of salt. Unfortunately, this came out a bit thicker than I was looking for. So, time to use some tomato juice. As I said, it turns out the thicker paste works for me. Now, if you are doing tomato juice, it's really 5 parts tomato juice to 1 part sauce, since the tomato juice is thicker, while this is still a little thicker than the acidy version with the lime juice. And you can use lemon juice if you want. This comes out nice for a bunch of different things. Also a bruschetta, pizza bagels. Nice. The tomato juice, be warned, does add a little bit of saltiness and does calm the flavors down a bit. And if you're going to go the tomato juice route, it's okay cold, but I would say it would be better heated up. Mostly because it'll bring back most of those flavors to life that are toned down by the tomato juice. That's about it. Hope you guys give it a shot.